Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Eddie Marcus again. This is Sunday morning, I think the 14th of April, roughly 10 to 3 or 2:50 in the morning. I'm up to speak with you because you are always on my mind, and liberation is key. Freedom, the joy of life. And my focus is expressing that not just in words, but in attitude and action to the degree that it can be something that you, the people, can embrace and experience and enjoy. I was awakened this morning listening to a preacher on the telly, and he was talking about Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ's life and the fact that Jesus Christ was killed, and it was really basically started up not just by the government but by the so-called church, as it were. And it takes me back to the kind of life that we're living today. As he was speaking, I thought about our nation. I thought about what and how Donald Trump became president of the United States. And I'm reminded that the story goes that there were a lot of great men in the beginning. At least we are made aware of quite a few of them. Guys like Abraham, you know the story of Abraham biblically. You know the story of Daniel. You know the story of Esau. You know the story of Jacob. You know the story about many great people inhabiting during that time that we have been given information in regards to. And these guys were, I guess, doing their thing. And as time passed, people were constantly talking about the beginning, talking about the people who were involved as far as the development of the nation and the things that the nation had to go through. And yet, there was a time that it was essential for Jesus Christ to come through. And in Jesus' actions and activities, he displayed something that the others who had been lifting up God were not doing. And it must have come in a time when it was needed, because there were miraculous things that occurred that never had occurred before, and drawing great attention to Jesus, who tried to make sure that it bounced off to God, because that's where it really went. I'm thinking about what it must have been like for these guys, these Pharisees and Sadducees, who were spending them time becoming great men of the Word, the great men of God, and what all of that great men of God meant. I mean, what was the significance of it after we had gone through a development period, and most of the conversation was on men who had passed on, men who did something. It was all the way usually about others, what others had done, not what we are doing, because what we are doing is talking about what others had done. And so Jesus come along, and he's not talking about so much of what others had done. He talked about it some, but the key was not the done, the key was the doing presently at that time. And apparently it was significant because the church didn't like it. It kind of reminds me of today. Well, I don't want to jump there right now. Let me stay on with Jesus Christ a little while longer. You think about Jesus was telling the people, one of the things that he told the people, that he came from his Father, that he and his Father was one. And people look at that and they kind of have some problems with him saying that he's the Son of God. They had some problems when they found out that supposedly he came from a mother who had a virgin. And that was some stuff that they could not understand. But for those who listened, they believed what he was saying, and they called him good. And he would say, well, no, I'm not good. There's only one good. They thought he was a great man. And everything that they had heard, those people who listened and who kind of believed, want to give it a little bit more than perhaps it was necessary. I say that because they say that, especially the thing that I heard this guy say this morning, with only by believing in Jesus Christ and his story of the virgin birth and died because of our sins and rose, and the whole purpose was to liberate us from our sins. And so you have to believe in Jesus Christ or you just lost. And I'm thinking, I don't see that like that. I'm thinking that this is something that they tied to Jesus Christ. The fact that Jesus Christ had a virgin birth, that's miraculous. But I think it's even more miraculous that a man was shaped out of dirt and came into the world. But as far as we might see, as far as what's being miraculous is concerned, but they're just things that happen. The way things occur, there's always a first. And I'm thinking now, your firstborn, many of you got a couple of kids, but your firstborn, is your firstborn any more important than your lastborn? Is Jesus more important than Adam? I mean, they each were beginnings. Are black people who they say the parents after God has created them, the parents of all races on the face of the earth? Does that make black people more important than all of the other people on the face of the earth? These are things that you have to deal with, that I deal with. And so what I really look and see when Jesus says, no man can get to the Father but by me, he's not saying, as far as I can see it, and when I'm talking about the way I can see it, I'm talking about the way the Spirit leads me to believe it. He's not saying that you got to believe that I am the one, that you get your focus rather than being on God has got to be on me. To me, that's to be a trick. Because the focus, what did God say according to the stories that we've been given? Thou shalt have no other gods before me, not even Jesus. But I can see the people saying that because they didn't know any better. The message of Jesus' life to me was that I live a life that represents truth. I live a life that represents connection with the truth, with God. And no man can get to the Father but by accepting the same things that I have accepted. Not believing in me, but accepting the things that I have accepted, which are true. And if they accept these same kinds of things, it will be true for them. But not take your eyes off God and put it on me. So what I'm actually saying is that, to me, Jesus Christ laid down his life because he was following the truth. And that's the same as Martin Luther King laying down his life because it was truth that he represented. And the evidence of it is that the same thing that happened to Jesus by those people who couldn't stand his truth, killing him, the same thing happened to Martin Luther King. People couldn't stand his truth, so they killed him. So Martin Luther King and Jesus were walking down the same path. And I'm just using Dr. Martin Luther King because you know him. There have been a lot of other people that are walking down that same path. But I look at that and I'm thinking about how Jesus was so effective in that time, especially when there were a group of people who call themselves important in this mission of keeping people educated about the beginnings of time. And I'm thinking that today, when we have a president, when America has a representative that stands up and emboldens evil like he does, and I'm asking myself, how is this relative to the times when Jesus was living? Well, think about it. Today we have preachers who have mega churches. They embrace and take in all kinds of tithes and offerings in the millions. People who send money to them, who watch them on TV and just send money to them. And they live in mansions, and they have transportation in limousines and jets. I mean, you can't tell the difference between them and the elitists who don't even go to church at all, who don't even believe in God. But they're living the same lifestyle. And they use this lifestyle as a key to say that God is blessing them. Well, we all know that the blessings are actually coming from people who are believing in these people as opposed to believing in God, as if that's going to mean something. Same way Jesus, believe in his preacher. And so this is going to do something. Some of them, I'd hate to mention their names, but if I don't mention their names, you won't be able to identify. Perhaps like Miss Joyce Myers. They say, man, she really amassing all kinds of money. That if you read, that's what you'll find. You talk about people like T.D. Jakes and Claffo Dollar and people like Osteen. I think Osteen has supposedly the biggest congregation in America today. But I heard some questions say T.D. Jakes might have something just as big, or at least making as much money. I don't know what that is true or not, but it is all about the same kinds of things. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking about today, what is it that would allow a person like Donald Trump to be in the White House? And so the thought crosses my mind is because why not? People's belief in God doesn't mean anything. You got these great rich people I just got through mentioning, and so many others, and they are focusing in on biblical stories. You know how you go to church. You've been going to church your whole life, and all you constantly hear, Bible story, Daniel in the lion's den, Meshach and Abednego, they put him in the fire furnace, Joseph and that story about him, and just stories and stories and stories. And what is the significance of these stories? To me, they about the same as the three bears, Goldilocks. They're just stories and stories and stories, but what is supposed to be their impact? You know, if the preachers and elders and bishops who were talking about these stories had some activities, they were doing something, maybe it would mean a little bit more. But the evidence that it's not meaning anything is the fact that so many people are haters and bigots and racists, and they just can't stand one another. All of these things, they haven't gone anywhere, and yet all of these people going to church all the time, and it makes it seem like these preachers are just like those Pharisees and Sadducees that we talked about long time ago. And so the field, it appears to me, is open for a main player, a player who comes in, who talks about love but expresses what that means, talks about generosity but expresses what that means, ties it into God as a reality thing that comes from the beginning, that has been substantiated throughout time to even exist now. But they are more or less, rather than talking, they are doing as Jesus said, unless a man, come by me, can focus on the things that I do and take those things as being the things that he or she does, which will either enlighten people for change or get them killed, you just wasted your time. And I say that we as American people have played that game long enough, but we now recognize that we've just been wasting our time. And so we end up with a president like Donald Trump, which is the evidence of what we, the American people, have really been about. Now, we can claim that we're the greatest nation, we're the most religious nation, we're the most caring nation, we're the best nation since the beginning of time. I'm sure every nation says that about themselves. But the evidence of their failure is that they're living under dictatorships. The evidence of their failure is that they've been robbed by other nations, and the people are running away from the nations, trying to find some place that's a little bit better. And while they thought America was better, now you're finding out that this demon in the White House, and I say demon not of the person, but because the spirit that lives in that person that allows them to do these demonic things will not allow these people to come here. any longer, doing everything he can to possibly stop them, being true to a bunch of people in this country who can't even think about helping people. They have stolen and benefited from their ancestors that have done so much from damage to the world, and now they think that they that they own something, that they are entitled to something that's more than others. At least that's the way the story goes. And I'm saying to this that there are people who stand up and really speak to these concerns and these issues. Ministers, elders, just common people with no other title than just a person who cares. And when they speak out, their conversation is squashed. Somebody can do the most ignorant thing overnight, and it'll go viral overnight. And you can have people speak to the truth of life that would benefit the whole dead blasted world, not just their own nation, but the whole world. And they squash it, it appears. I don't want to say I don't know who they are. But they can make a post that been posted, let's see, a week, 2 weeks, a year. And if you look back, you'll see maybe 11 people or 12 people might have clicked on it. But if you really did an investigation, you'll probably find that each of those clicks came by the one who posted it, checking to see if anybody else paying any attention. But the bottom line is that when I'm thinking about Jesus' way, and I've said to myself that my mission is not to focus on Jesus. My mission is to focus on God and what God's plan of life is for human beings, and what role I have been designed and put here on this planet to do in that process. And being in the middle of this hell that I'm in every day and not making any money. I mean, for 40 years, I don't get any money for this, and I ever tried. And I'm not becoming a household name and anybody paying attention to what I'm saying. And yet I'm committed to it, to the fact that I've been in jails and prisons and experienced poverty continuously for 40 years and still have not turned it loose, even when everybody's saying, curse God and die. And yet I'm still here. So I recognize that my role in the middle of this hell is to stand up against all of the evils that I recognize, share it with the people, but not just in words, but in deeds, because as far as I can see, the people are lost. The people are lost. These mega churches, these people aren't helping anybody but themselves. Even after they've gotten all this money from people, they tell the people to pray to God, and God will bless them. Well, the only blessings that these preachers get after praying to God is what the people do for them. So the message there, the preacher should share it if they weren't so preachers, is help one another. The way you bring money in and give it to me, I don't need it. Take that money if you have to and use it to make sure that the people, your public, your sisters, your brothers, that each of you get a chance to have a better life. And that might teach them something about the value of money, or the least value that comes from money. I guess I'm saying these things to you, ladies and gentlemen, because I want to live in a better world. I want my kids to live in a better world. And the path that we're on right now is not a better world. Many of the evangelicals and people who call themselves the original upstanding God-given people, they embrace this evil man, Donald Trump. They support him. They claim that he's mentioned in prophecy, and their connection with Donald Trump ties them to God. How blind can they be? And yet you got preachers who are running around in the community talking about building churches, getting churches, when people are selling churches because they've lost their value. They're just a handicap, an asset that they don't need. And yet somebody's trying to get a building. When many churches have closed down because they only had 5 or 6 members, and they left. And there are other people still trying to get a building, as if they got a building that would mean something. When if you were concerned about the people, you'd knock on doors. If you were concerned, you're not knocking on doors though. If you were concerned about people, you'd be on street corners. But you're not on street corners, because in your head, in your psyche, you got to have this building. And this building is going to draw people in. Like just opening up a door is going to draw people in. The evidence does not support that. So, I'm thinking, who is this preacher? Who is this elder? Who is this bishop? Or who is just this simple individual that God is going to use to enlighten America about truth, to enlighten America and empower Americans to overcome this evilness that they have put on the throne in the United States of America? Who is that individual that is willing to put down their lives, who's not out trying to benefit the individual, but to benefit the nation? Who is that individual? Where are you? I used to think, and this is honesty, I used to think that that would be me, because that's what I wanted to do. I recognize men like Jesus, my hero. I recognize men like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, men who sacrificed everything for God, sacrificed everything for we the people. They are my heroes. And I used to think that walking in those tracks would be me. I wouldn't be just some ordinary preacher out here ripping folks off. I wouldn't be, because my mother used to tell me all the time, it'd be, you talk well. I was a younger guy then, and my thought processes were quicker. You could have one of the biggest churches in the country, and I would tell her, God didn't call me to do that. God called me to do what I do. I even ran for office several times to use that as a platform. What would it be for American president of the United States telling people that God is love and there must be liberty and justice for all people in the United States? And what just talking, gave voice to it, stood up for it, and wasn't like this evil guy right here who wants to send people back from where they're coming from, who wants to put a border. Somebody that would stand up to make sure that everybody had education and that they weren't overwhelmed with bills, that everybody had access to health care. What was wrong with the president to make sure that everybody had housing or whatever they had to do to make sure that this happened, even if they had to stop using money and just did everything by putting everybody to work, having everybody participate in the process, making them co-owners in all things that existed. So when it comes down to what you want, well, you got ownership in this or that. So you don't have to have a gym built on your lot. You don't have to have a gym built in your house. Or you don't have to have a car lot at your house so you have so many cars. No. Cars all over the country belong to you. Well, if they are out there made available to people to make choices from, if you want one today or you need one for a period of time, it's there for you. Yachts, if you need them, it's there for you. Why not? Some people use them today. Why can't all people access them today? So this is what I'm saying as president. I thought I was bringing to the people, and I was shunned and rejected. I didn't ask you to raise me any money. Who is this fool trying to be president? That's what I was called. And now they got a true fool in the White House, which signifies who are the fools that put this fool in the White House. So I guess when you get down to it, we are all fools. Maybe I'll call this particular broadcast that we are all fools. Or, yep, we are all fools. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to share with you the significance, as I see it, of Jesus Christ in this story of life. The same as Adam's role, the same as Dr. King's role, the same as your firstborn, the same as the first of anything is just how everything is followed. But the first is no more significant than the last because it's all designed by the same, the power of God. The true concern is, how does it grow? How does it develop? How is it sustained? Is it sustained on the principles that would allow it to be magnificent or death? I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. I've kind of bobbled through this conversation this morning, and the fact that you're listening to it means that you have some concern about the things that I've mentioned here, and for that I'm grateful. The world is grateful. I'm sure Trump isn't, but that's okay. My whole purpose is for us to recognize the truth, and that truth might set us free, and that we don't have to go to war. We don't have to start just really having a implosion here in America, where you got to bring out the National Guards and have to bring out military police and put us under martial law just to empower the powers that be that we can't see. And I'm not talking about God, but the people who got money, the people who have said there is no God, and that they have amassed enough of the resources that have been identified as being important till they can manipulate the goings of daily life in any country, anywhere, at any time, so they can shift it to be exactly what they want. Yet at the same time have been recognizing that every good deed is a good deed, and good deeds come from the Almighty God. And so when these good deeds occur, they allow people to see some measure of what God possibly is like. And so these powers that's trying to destroy have to hold back a little bit, because if they come in too fast, they might wake us up. And we recognize for what is really going on, and they don't want to do that. So they come in gradually, catch us asleep, lure us to sleep. And then the next thing you know, like the fish on a hook, we've been caught. So ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank you so very, very much. Until next time, this is Eddie Marcus saying goodbye.